When you get squeezed, meaning I'm going to say squeezed is when a tough question gets asked, or when the adjustatorium's full and you're a little worried that like, how am I going to get through the adjustments and the people? Part of that muscle is the certainty of what you're going to do, right? So like, if I get asked a hard question, medical jargon isn't coming out. It's chiropractic philosophy as my lens through which I answer that question. Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way. All right, welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. And I am back in the studio today with Dr. Chris Grier, who's been on here many episodes before. So go back and listen to those too. We call him the scholar for a reason because he is great at teaching, great at helping others connect the dots on topics. And we were just talking offline a little bit about how important certainty is, no matter your stage in practice, but certainly when you're a younger doc or a newer doc, building that certainty muscle. So, Dr. Chris, welcome back. I hope summer's treating you well. It sounds like you've been playing some baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, playing and watching a lot of baseball as well.
Okay.
My son's got the whole high school season going in Iowa. For those of you listening, we do baseball in the summer in Iowa. So there's a lot of it for sure.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why don't they have it in March and April too?
That's a good question. I'm not positive actually. But we've done it this way forever. And as a player, I loved it. And in the spring, you still play spring, and you still play in the fall,
Okay.
but the summer weather can be great. It can be brutal, but it can be much better than March in Iowa.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fun fact. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There
All right.
you go. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no problem. Tell us why you picked certainty today. Like, what made you say we need to talk about this?
Yep. So one of my best friends in the world, great doctor down in Florida, just messaged me yesterday, and he's in an organization that they're hiring new docs, and he's just messaged me and he said, what do you guys do? Like how, let's have a conversation about building certainty in young docs. And he's recognizing it as a doc who's also been in practice for 19 years. He's recognizing it as one of the greatest hurdles that young docs, new docs transitioning from one role to another have to get over before they can thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, I'm like, well, yeah, we've got systems for that. We've got systems that we teach on certainty. And it's not just here, implement a system, but it's definitely like, first take this very seriously, because it's really the do not pass go moment where you're either going to ascend to becoming an excellent chiropractor, an excellent guide and leader for your patients, or you're not, or you're going to fall into mediocrity. And I'm guessing because people are listening to this podcast in the first place, they're not here for mediocrity. So let's talk about certainty.
Yes. I agree with you that this is one of those things. We were even chatting of like, what are we talking about today? Is it certainty, or are we talking about building volume, especially in a one doc setting, or if you're a doc in a team, like how do you build your volume up? And I said, we got to talk about certainty first, because you don't build volume without certainty being the foundation you're building off of. And so to me, certainty can be like, it's almost like an art form we're having a conversation about, just like our technique. There's many layers to how we get certainty in our technique. And don't get me wrong, your technique is one of those things that builds certainty for you. Knowing you can trust your hands, knowing that you know where you're going to put your hands, all of those things are the art you're building as our craft, but it also becomes an art form of the certainty that you then walk into the room with. And when I was younger in practice, I think it was year 2 for me, and this kind of fits with the volume conversation I know we're going to have the next time we record, is one of my mentors said to me, like, I think I was stuck at 200 visits a week and I wanted to go to 300 visits a week in our practice. I was only doc at that time. And he's like, when you squeeze an orange juice needs to come out, right? Apple juice doesn't come out of an orange juice comes out. You're a chiropractor when you get squeezed, meaning I'm going to say squeezed is when a tough question gets asked, or when the adjustatorium's full and you're a little worried that like, how am I going to get through the adjustments and the people? Part of that muscle is the certainty of what you're going to do, right? So like, if I get asked a hard question, medical jargon isn't coming out. It's chiropractic philosophy as my lens through which I answer that question, right? And same thing, like if I don't have certainty in my hands and certainty in the adjustment being enough, now I get a room full of people and I'm doing a bunch of dances that aren't chiropractic and it feels heavy, right? It's hard to see volume when you're not crystal clear that the adjustment is the highest priority use of your time and your hands. And I'm going to say that if that irritates you that I just said that, I might be talking to you right now. You might need
Yeah.
to go check your certainty on, what are we really doing here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and you've touched on, what we teach is 2 of the types of certainty, which are clinical certainty. What are you gonna do if you weren't saying a thing? What are you doing with people in your office? Like, what process are you taking them through clinically? How are you using your skills to produce a result? That's
Love
the clinical certainty, and then the other one that you talked about is philosophical certainty, and there's 2 things. I think there's 2 sides of that philosophical certainty coin that we need to be mindful of, especially as we talk about in our next podcast, like how you take this certainty and then produce volume out of it. But
Mhm.
that is being rock solid on your philosophy. And I'm not saying there's one right philosophy, but there can be some different versions and flavors, but you get rock solid on what yours is. And then make sure you're utilizing your conversations appropriately to say what you need to say and nothing more. It can be, for those of us that are very philosophically certain, that can lead to too much talking sometimes. As Dr. Franson would say, sometimes then you go tell them everything they never wanted to know about chiropractic.
Yes. Yes. That's
Yeah.
so good. And I believe that the deeper you wrestle, let's just say that philosophical piece down where you listen to speakers, you get to some of these philosophical events, you go read green books, you pick up some of Simon Sensen's work, you listen to some of the podcasts and YouTube that are out there. There should be speakers, maybe Chris and I are those right now that agitate you a bit, where you're like, gosh, I don't know if I believe that. Right. And that's how you know if you're able to wrestle with it in your understanding, you're doing the work there. Right. Cause I can remember going to New Beginnings and I'd listen to someone and I'm like, wow, like my body just wanted to lean in like that. What they were speaking felt like truth to me. Right. And then I'd hear a different person. I was like, don't know. Like, I don't know if I really buy all of that. And again, we all have our different versions of how it comes through. But then I would take my notes from there and kind of be like, okay, like, what does this mean to me? And how do I see that? How do I see that in the adjustatorium with what's happening with people? And that, this isn't something you get immediately overnight. It takes experience to start to wrestle through that.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess I want to be clear on what I just said too. Like, do I think that chiropractic philosophy has a lane? Yes, I absolutely do. And we need to find that lane and we need to stay in that lane. And the lane was detailed for us in
Yeah.
1927, right? With the 33 principles. What I mean by it is like just what you said, like learn about these things, dig into these. What does this mean to me? How does this come out in the ways that I work in my office? How can
Right.
I communicate this particular thing? Where does principle number 23 show up in my office? However, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't want it just to be like choose your philosophy, go find your philosophy from thin air. No, there's definitely bedrock to anchor into and
Yes.
learn about, but we need to explore it. I think it would be useful if people already have their pens and pencils out, or if they've already rewound a little bit and been like, what was that they said? I think we ought to just say, here are the 4 types of certainty, and here's how you gain them. Should we dig into that,
Let's
Lona?
do it. Let's do it. You
All right.
gave us two,
We
right?
gave you 2, so we've got philosophical, we've got clinical, we've got communication certainty, which we've also nudged up against. How is my clinical certainty going to come across in what I say? How is my philosophical certainty going to come across in what I say? That's communication certainty. And to your point with the volume, you got to know how you're going to say it, when you're going to say it, so
When
that
you're
it
going to
comes out.
stop saying
When you're
something.
going to stop saying it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then the fourth one is business acumen. So we have to be certain in business acumen. And if you're a business owner listening in right now, you really have to lean into that. If you're an associate listening in right now, lean into that in a different way. You know, you aren't the one pulling the strings and making the decisions in the office necessarily, but your role in the office has business implications. So we
Yeah.
have to have some amount of business acumen, some certainty around business acumen.
Well, and nothing's more frustrating. I think this is one of the things that TRP does better than anyone. Nothing's more frustrating than wanting your practice to grow and not knowing what you're looking at from a business perspective, right?
Exactly, not even knowing that there are 15 functions of a business, right? Like, and certainly not knowing what those 15 functions are, which is what we teach in one of our, I think, most elegant tools,
Yes,
for
I would
sure,
agree.
accountability grid.
Yep.
So we have to have certainty in those 4 areas, and most people listening in are like, "Oh, I've got certainty in that." You know,
Mhm.
there's I think what I see coming out of school is people, if they've really dug into a technique, they come out with some clinical certainty. I
Yep.
I I can do these moves, I can make these adjustments. However, they haven't yet had the experience of actually getting results by doing that. They've just
Yep.
learning that side of it. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I love to talk about chiropractic in whatever way. I love to talk to patients and influence patients in that way." That's where your communication certainty is like, I think that's my best. Some people have done all the work to read the green books and dig into the principles and read Fred Barge's books and maybe, Cynic's books and those sorts of things. They're like, okay, the philosophical certainty is my thing, and maybe it's the business side of it. So usually we stand tallest on one of these platforms, like, hey, this is my thing. And that's great. And you got to dig into that strengths finder, a la strengths finder, right? Like take what you're strongest at and enhance that.
Mhm.
And we also need to look and say, like, okay, we need certainty in these other things.
Yeah.
So how am I going to get that? And that's really the question that comes out like, okay, well, what do you do? Well, we say that there are ways that you do that too. And one of them is experience. And
Mhm.
that's great if you have the opportunity to have experience in that. You know, you're actually talking with people, you're actually putting hands on people, doing the exams, delivering the adjustments, all of that sort of experience is huge. But lots of times you don't get that experience,
Mhm.
until kind of the rubber is hitting the road and you
Yeah.
better have your other stuff in order first. So observational is another way to do it. So you've got experiential, you've got observational. And this is where I just love it. I'm an hour from Palmer, Davenport right here. And I've been having pretty regularly, every couple of months, I'll have student or a couple students come over and observe a shift. Like that is invaluable. I can't tell you how much. I mean, I've been doing this for 19 years. I've been a coach for 4 years. Like we have our systems down. We run a good ship. Go visit offices like
Yeah.
that.
And just because you're in practice doesn't mean you can't go visit some offices, right? That is
Absolutely. And I've had
right.
that too. I've had that recently too, where doctors go like, hey, I'm going to come watch. I'm going to come observe, which is great. And I love doing that, right? I love getting out of my comfort zone and going into other offices and seeing the kind of where I want to go. So
Yep.
go to an office, which is doing the things you want to do,
Yeah.
or existing in a sphere where you want to grow into
Right.
and see what they do. So that's observation. You've got the experiential, and then the other is didactic learning. Some of that is what you're doing right now, listener. You're being into a podcast, you're listening. Hopefully you're taking notes and learning in your unique way. But there's also there's the green books. I really do like Rob Sinnott's book, relatively recent book, the new version of the chiropractic textbook, puts it into a more modern perspective. I like the original chiropractic textbook also, and I give it to students. Like that's one of the fun things. Give that away
Right.
because that didactic learning is important as well.
So true. Yep. That's
So
really good.
those are our 3 avenues for enhancing certainty, and you got to use them all.
Yep.
That's like the punchline there. You got to use them all. And experience is the one where if you're a student, it's tough to gain the experience. So lean into those other two, observe and didactic learning. And then once you get into clinic and once you get into certainly your externship, those sorts of opportunities, then you're really ready to use your experience hands-on for growing your certainty.
That's so good. That's so good. Chris, I also dare say, and now in building out teams over the years, that everyone on the team gets to work on all four of those things too, because even though
Definitely.
the CAs may not have technique on the table, they certainly have communication technique that we're wanting not only the docs to understand, but the CAs to understand. We want them to have our philosophy or a shared overlap of how we look through a lens at what's happening with the people we serve. And so if you feel like, oh, I'm doing pretty well in these categories, I am working on it, then especially if you're one of the clinic owners, like ask yourself, how well am I bringing people along with me in these categories?
Nailed it. Exactly. If you're looking for growth and you're not seeing it, because by the way, attraction is a reflection of your certainty.
Mhm.
If you're looking for it and you're like, I'm as certain as can be, why aren't we growing? Look at your team. Have you instilled certainty with them? Have you given them the opportunity to observe what's going on, to learn didactically, and to then practice it? Which practice there, like actually experiencing it, can come from role play, which is where team training is so huge.
Yes, so true. Practically, take us back for the last few minutes we have here. When you were young Chris Grier opening your doors in Iowa, like how do you think this kind of like progressed out for you? Where did you feel most confident right from the jump? Where did you know I had to go get myself fed? And how'd you
Yep.
do that?
Yeah, I feel fortunate in that my fire was lit on the philosophy side
Mhm.
of things. So I just knew that this was the right thing to do. It was why I was drawn to chiropractic in the first place as a profession. I just knew it was right, like with like a capital R, and it was the truth with a capital T. It was like there was just something that hit me like that's the thing. And so I definitely sought that out. I learned about philosophy, and then I love thinking and with mind maps and stuff like what's this mean, so I did a bunch of the didactic learning side of that, and then in practice it was like I struggled honestly clinically early on because I didn't feel very good about like how to care plan and what it's
Mhm.
going to look like. I didn't have the experience to know, okay, what's it going to look like 12 visits out. Certainly I didn't know what it's going to look like 150 or 400 visits out, which is
Yeah.
what we get to do now. So I was definitely lacking in that, but having that grounding in solid clinical skills along with, I would say above solid philosophical certainty is what allowed me the success that I had. And I think there's other ways to it, but I'm pretty glad that's the route that it was for me. Tell us about yours, Dr. Lona.
Yeah, I think similar to you, I think there was something just innate in me that loved to adjust. And I had in the last year and a half of school really sought out certain full technique seminars, brought in some technique to Northwestern that I wanted, which also gave me opportunity to learn to lead a bit because I was trying to get other students to these events. And then, as you were walking us through it, I was thinking like, okay, communication. I joined Toastmasters early on in practice just to have some more repetition of learning how to speak to people. But really, quite frankly, serving tables and bartending really helped me be nimble and on my feet with just like who's in front of me, how do I and so I think I came into year 1 and 2 with some of just, again, loving to adjust. I didn't necessarily have a deep philosophy root immediately just because I had grown up with chiropractic. I thought I knew what chiropractic was, which to me was just I like to adjust. I didn't have a deep root to like why exactly, like intelligence in the body and, that the implications of like what adjustments can mean for somebody's lineage and all of that. But it just was innate. And then as my mentors really steered me to like get to new beginnings, start reading green books, I took the ACP, which is the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers. I did the first year certificate, and you have to like really wrestle through and then present to a group of very seasoned chiropractors philosophy, and that was one of those things that I was terrified of doing because I thought, "Oh man, how am I gonna say something here?" But it also that they haven't heard before or that they're gonna agree with potentially. But that's also the point in philosophy on some level is to wrestle with it, and that was that season for me where I think I really got sturdier, and then it's just developed from there. So yeah, I think knowing that those first few years, especially, like if you can let yourself be hungry and humble, you always want to be hungry and humble, but those first years, like pound the pavement and get fed, right? It's going to change the trajectory of how practice looks for you for your entire career.
Yep.
And that is well played, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Go observe it,
Yeah.
go experience it, and then so learn it and then
Yeah.
experience it. Go practice it. Like get in there and
Right. Put
make
some miles
it
in, put some
happen.
effort in. You just started your learning really once you leave school, I would
Absolutely.
say.
And I think it's worth pointing out as we wrap here that this is not the conventional thinking. It's
Mhm.
certainly not the conventional thinking in the general world, right? Like
Right.
we've got this very medical model,
Yeah.
model that's just dropped on every person. We have to keep that in mind that we have had that dropped on us too. So we have to start thinking like, does that actually fit? Is that actually the thing? And it takes effort to be nonconformist. And chiropractors, like by definition, are nonconformist. And I think the more we attempt to conform, the tougher it gets to actually get results with what we do. So
Yeah.
know as you're
Yeah.
gaining your certainty that you're working against the conformity that's out there, and that's fine. Like you just know that that's what it's going to be. Like we are different and we are amazing in what we do, and nobody knows about it. So we have to come from that platform, so to speak, of like, okay, I got to go seek this all out because it's not going to be given to you in the
Right.
world.
Not gonna be
Sure.
found easily necessarily. I agree. I think it was on the coaches meeting last week. Someone was talking about the difference. Yeah, Dr. Steven was talking about entropy versus syntropy, right? Which first of
Yeah.
all, syntropy is a great place to go get some
Clinical certainty.
around, yeah, your clinical as well as philosophical. They weave it in.
Yeah.
But this idea that, if we aren't working towards building, and I'm going to say building those different pillars that Chris just laid out for us, those four foundational pieces to your certainty and your conviction around what you do, that it's naturally over time just falls to the entropy. And that's why, you've never really arrived, which is the beautiful thing about life as well as chiropractic is like we can always get better. We can always get deeper. We can always, we're going to get shook sometimes and then we go back to what recenters us. So, mhm,
Absolutely. I love that. You have to put energy into a system for it to grow.
mhm.
Otherwise, the natural state of things is it will break down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And that's exactly how it is with our certainty.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great discussion. We'll be back on together in the next month and we'll be talking about how do we take this now that we know where we got to go get strengthened in our certainty and then build volume around it.
Let's do it. Thanks,
Okay.
Dr. Lona, for having me again.
Of course. We'll see you soon.
Bye bye.
Hey everyone, please listen in for this next bonus interview of one of our remarkable success partners. They all help us help more people find the benefits of chiropractic. So listen on.
What's up, Remarkables? Hey, we have an opportunity to pick the brains of one of our smartest, most successful success partners, one of the sharpest guys that I know in chiropractic. You probably recognize the name, Dr. Josiah Fitzsimmons and his awesome group, Lucro. Josiah, we're psyched to have an opportunity to discover what you discovered as you put together what I think is the most complete, comprehensive, and compelling industry study that I've seen in a while, right? So I'm a numbers guy. I love the metrics. I know you're the numbers guy now. You love what you're doing with your metrics. We'll talk about that. But I'd love to be able to discuss today. What did you guys unearth? What were the three most notable findings that came out of your recent state of chiropractic, the industry state of chiropractic study report that you guys just put out for 2026? Talk to us about what were the most interesting findings.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely get a link so everybody can download it. But we've compiled data now from about 400 clinics, over $350 million in annual revenue inside of our reports. The average clinic inside of Luke right now is doing over $800,000 a year. So definitely higher level performing clinics around the country. But one of the things that stood out to me right off the bat was the profit that's being left on the table. What we found in the report is that the average clinic should be generating $97,000 more in profit, not in revenue, but bottom line profitability, that they're not maximizing their space or their team. And so we found $39,000 in underutilized profit from team that they're already paying for, and then another $58,000 of underutilized space. So they have the space, they have the availability to see more volume, to generate more revenue, and that's leaving a combined $97,000 of profit on the table.
Okay, so let's stay here on number one. So just the fact that these practices are not optimized, right? So there's so much more capacity that people are not getting all the juice for the squeeze, so to speak, right? So I can't tell you how many chiropractors approach us and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about opening a second clinic or a 17th clinic, what have you." And they just haven't optimized their clinic or their existing practice or their other practices. And there's just so much more meat on the bone, right? So when we talk about how to solve this problem, we always say there's three steps. You've got to operationalize, then professionalize, and then optimize, right? So operationalizing is your systems, professionalizing is your people, and then optimizing, which is what you're talking about. You have so many hours, you've got fixed overheads. You're seeing more people, your overheads are not going to go up. Your profit margin's going to go up, right? So that's what I'm hearing from you is that these businesses, these practices are just not optimized. And did I hear that number right? Did you say $97,000 of profit? Bottom line, not top line?
Yep, exactly. 97,000. Yeah, you're exactly spot on. Most people have the capacity to generate tons more revenue and obviously profitability, but they're not maximizing what they already are. And so you're totally right. People are trying to find the next shiny object, trying to do the next practice, trying to add the next service, trying to increase hours or do all these other secondary things when they have the potential profitability just sitting right there in front of them that they're not taking advantage of.
Yeah, I like to say that every 97,000 helps. All right.
Yeah.
So what was the second thing? What did you
So-
guys unearth as you were putting together this industry report that
So-
we consider the most notable finding, second most
Yeah.
notable finding?
I would say this one for me was really notable for me that I was really surprising is the average clinic of all of the 374 clinics in our database. The average clinic was generating or charging on average $61 per chiropractic adjustment. The top 10% clinics, okay, so our average clinic was doing about 830,000. The top 10% are doing about 1.7 million, okay, and they're averaging $63 an adjustment. So from 61 to $63, I mean, essentially the same number, right? And so that was really surprising. They're double, the average clinic size, and they're charging about the same exact amount. So what are they doing? Is they're obviously optimizing, like you just said, they're maximizing their capacity. They're doing a much better job of maximizing what they're already paying for. They're charging about the same amount, but they're obviously seeing more volume.
Yeah. As I was reviewing this report myself, I was actually scrolling through it on my phone on an airplane, which it was good stuff because I don't really typically like to read things on the plane like that, on my phone, I should say. And that was something that really stood out to me. I was like, wow, look at that. CVA or collection visit average was almost the same for the let's call it average performers versus the top performers. That broke my guessing machine. I would have thought that you would have seen just greater disparity, and those bigger revenue practices were generating a lot of that revenue by charging more for their services. But the essence of it was in chiropractic, what we're seeing is it's usually made up in volume, and it's more of a volume play than it is a pricing strategy. Now, if we were having a profit conversation, we all know that increasing your prices is the fastest way to increase your profit. That's a different conversation. But when we just talk about top line revenue and the size of the businesses, the delta between average practices and the top practices was much, much smaller than I expected.
Yeah, very surprising to me. I was saying exactly. I thought there'd be a bit much bigger discrepancy between the two.
All right. How about number one? What's the was the thing that that said really just stuck out to you?
Yeah, for me, it was the actual profit margins of clinics across the country. Before I opened my practice, even since I've been open, before we had all this individual data, that's when most practices that I talked to are always claiming 40, 50%, profit margins, is what most doctors have said over the year and kind of as a benchmark profitability, even as a goal. And so even before we had a lot of this data, even our perfect P&L, I think was a little skewed with too high of a profit margin, for clinics. And so what we found is that the average profit margin across the entire band is between 25 and 35%. And so the 0 to 50,000 revenue band per month in generating revenue, 25% profit margin, 50 to 100K, 28%, 100 to 150K, 30%, 150 to 250K a month, 28%, 250K plus, highest profit margin, actually 35%. And so a lot of times we talk a lot about, you'd rather have 20% of a grape versus 40% of a watermelon. What we actually found is that the highest generating revenue clinics are also the highest profitable margin clinics. So they're getting 35% of a watermelon, and then the smallest clinics actually had the lowest profit margin, so they're getting 20% of a grape, so it's actually the inverse. The biggest clinics not only the highest revenue, but also highest profit margin. The smallest clinics not only had the lowest revenue, but also the lowest profit margin. And really the biggest factor that we've determined in the report from that is the fixed costs. Overhead and practice costs add up to about 30% of top line revenue for the smaller clinics, whereas they only add up to about 15% of top line revenue for the larger clinics, because your utility bills, your internet, most of your expenses that are fixed, they don't change whether you're generating 50K or 250K. I pay the exact same amount in internet that I did when I first started that I do now, generating $600,000 a month.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The terms that we use in the Remarkable Practice is the difference between effectiveness and efficiency. So effectiveness drives revenue, whereas efficiency drives profit, right? And understanding this is like it might be counterintuitive, but the practices that are probably more effective, they're probably more conscious of being more efficient as well, because it's the efficiency that drives the throughput, right? So throughput drives output. Throughput is services, volume, and the people that you're caring for, right? And throughput drives output, which is the economic engine, so it's the output is what drives the revenue and the profit specifically for the owners and for the team. I think it's fascinating, man. It's a fantastic study. You're going to give us a link here, right? So that people can get their hands on the Lucro report. We'll put that in the show notes down below. Otherwise, how else can people learn more about Lucro and what you guys are doing? I love the fact that you are helping more people help more people. That's what our Success Partner relationship is all about. And I know that when people have their data and they're informed, they make data-driven decisions. They can be informed leaders. People really make better decisions when they have the data. When you have a high data environment, you have a low drama environment. When you have low data, you have high drama. And at the end of the day, you shouldn't have emotions when it comes to your business. Save all your emotions for your practice, right? Save all your emotions for your mission, for your purpose, for your new patient consultation, for your report of findings, for your better results faster. Put all your emotions there. You don't want to have any emotions in your business office.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So if you want more information, we actually have a new offer. Go to morelucro.ai and you can actually directly connect your bank accounts, credit cards, your information, and you're going to get automatic insights into all of your data. So a really cool upgrade on our software that you can just directly connect securely through Plaid, your bank account information. We can give you automated financial feedback and insights on your data. The other big thing that I want to mention too, in addition to the industry report, we also launching and almost completed a compensation guide and a pricing guide. So we know across all these clinics what they're paying every single one of their team members, what they're charging for every single one of their services. And so inside that software, you can actually already see it. Once you create an account, you can look at every single individual position in a chiropractic clinic, an associate doctor, a front desk, a back office, a CA, all the positions we have for every single state in the country. What's the average that they're paying a CA? What's the average they're paying an associate doctor? What's the high end? What's the low end? What's their bonus structures? We have that for every position in the chiropractic clinic. And then also pricing, what's everybody charging in Alaska for an adjustment versus in Tennessee versus in Florida? What's everyone charging for decompression, for shockwave, for exams, for x-rays? We have an entire guide, pricing and compensation, so that you can see exactly how you compare to other people in your state and the whole country as a whole.
Awesome, brother. Keep up the great work. We appreciate you help so many of our Remarkable Practice docs and many of our listeners here in the Remarkable CEO podcast. This is Dr. Josiah Fitzsimmons from Lucro Bookkeeping. Check these guys out. I think they're fantastic. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.